to waterboard me. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh. We're on the line in Tripoli with Peter Bouckaert of Human Rights Watch. He's the emergencies director. He's in the capital of Libya. Let's talk about these latest revelations, Peter. How did you uncover these hundreds of letters in the Libyan Foreign Ministry proving that Gaddafi regime has been working for years with the CIA in the United States, with MI6, British intelligence in Britain?
We were going around about 4 or 5 days ago to the different intelligence headquarters in Tripoli to see what the state of their archives was and to make sure that they were not destroyed or looted, as had happened in other cities, because they do contain a lot of important evidence. So I went to the Libyan spy agency, the external intelligence building. I was the first foreigner to arrive there and spent about 5 or 6 hours going through their archives, looking for information about the rendition programs. And we stumbled upon a set of several files in a room relating to the CIA renditions and the UK relationship as well with Musa Kusa, the spy chief. There were many, many more documents there. But we focused mostly on those just because once we started reading them, we were stunned by the closeness of the relationship between Musa Kusa and both the CIA and the MI6 heads of clandestine services.
And explain everything, or as much as you can, of what you saw. Start with the CIA and exactly the relationship and how far back it went that you could see in these documents with Gaddafi.
The documents that we found date mostly from a period in 2003 and 2004, when the CIA and MI6 were dismantling Gaddafi's weapons of mass destruction program and reestablishing their intelligence relationship with the Libyan government. But we found many documents relating to the rendition and to the capture and rendition of Islamist suspects abroad. The CIA was offering to capture and render Libyan Islamists to the Gaddafi government, and then they were sending the questions they wanted to be asked to the Gaddafi government. We also found many documents which just show how close their relationship was. One of the documents I found is a fax dated Christmas Day 2003, in which the head of MI6 clandestine services it starts, "Dear Musa," and then expresses regret that Musa is not joining him for Christmas lunch, and is signed "Your friend," and then the name of this person. It just shows a relationship which went way beyond the professional into the intimate, really, with a man who was known for his brutality and his direct role in repression, a man who probably knows a lot more about the Lockerbie bombing and other dark chapters in Libyan history than anybody else.
Why was it, is it the case, Peter, that in Libya it was more shocking, this extraordinary rendition program, than, for example, elsewhere in the region?
Well, the Libyan government is known for its brutality, and the people who were rendered, we went to visit many of them in 2008 in Abu Salim, and they talked about the torture they have suffered. But we should remember that the United States continues to remain in close touch with similar abusive spy agencies. They certainly had a similarly close relationship with the Egyptians, with the Yemens, with the Jordanians, and for many years with the Uzbeks, using them to debrief people that they had captured and rendered under torture. So it's not a unique situation in Libya. It's just that because of the fall of Tripoli, we were able to gain access to documents that the CIA and the MI6 certainly would rather keep in the dark where they belong.
Peter, before we turn to Gareth Peirce, I wanted to ask you specifically about Abdullah Belhaj, the rebel negotiator, head of the NTSC, the National Transition Committee negotiating team. How did he end up being brought back to Libya?
I'm not. Are you talking about Abdelhakim Belhaj, the
yes,
chief?
yes.
Yes. So Belhaj became the commander of the fighters in Tripoli and is now the chief of the fighters in Tripoli because of the important role he played in the fighting. He is a person who in the past has received military training in Afghanistan. So he and his fighters led the battle for Tripoli. I think it is important to note that he and many other members of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group have renounced terrorism a long time ago and have renounced their previous relationship with al-Qaeda. I met Belhaj a few days ago after we found his own rendition document, and he expressed in what is, in my opinion, a sincere commitment to a new Libya which is democratic and respectful of human rights. And it is important that we try to incorporate people who make that commitment into the new Libya, and only exclude those who really have blood on their hands or who have been involved in terrorist activity, not people who just have a conservative Islamist belief.
Peter Bouckaert, thank you very much for being with us, speaking to us from Tripoli. He's Human Rights Watch's Emergencies Director. As we turn now to Gareth Peirce, one of Britain's best-known human rights attorneys. She's represented numerous Guantánamo prisoners as well. Currently, she is representing Julian Assange. She is author of a new book, Dispatches from the Dark Side, on torture and the death of justice. As you investigate and hear about these hundreds of documents that show the very close relationship between the CIA, MI6, and extraordinary rendition to Libya under Gaddafi, who was well known for torture, what comments do you have? Gareth Peirce, welcome.
It's not a surprise that they exist. It's important that they've been found, and it's extremely important that they be preserved. They confirm what's always been known, that the government of this country and these intelligence services, from the beginning after 9/11, had an intention to present a picture, a narrative, that there was an Islamic worldwide conspiracy, and sadly a false narrative that brought in every resistance movement, every legitimate resistance movement suffering under dictators such as Gaddafi. And part of that narrative in relation to Libya has in fact come to fruition now to show its falsity, which is that Gaddafi was indeed a brutal dictator. There was indeed a right and a duty for dissidents to resist, and amongst those dissidents there was a group, the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. What is perhaps the logical conclusion of that is the hypocrisy that we now discover, to find that on the one hand we were saying here officially there is no possibility of deporting dissidents to Libya who have been given sanctuary in the UK because it's a regime that will torture. At the same time, attempting to present a narrative that all those dissidents were linked to al-Qaeda and unlawfully reintroduce internment to lock them up indefinitely without trial. Yet, we now discover, simultaneously engineering the rendition of one of the members of that group, Belhaj, to go to Libya, to be tortured, which we knew. We knew it was our state policy that we knew Libya did that to its dissidents, and then to facilitate members of the intelligence services going here to interrogate him. Specifically, as I read in yesterday's newspaper, he says to confirm for them that there were links which were always denied between the LIFG and al-Qaeda. And therefore it looks like a complete construct to achieve evidence for a narrative that the government was determined existed, whether or not it did.
Gareth, in response to Belhaj's request or demand for an apology, the British Foreign Secretary William Hague said that Britain was interested, that this was an accusation against the previous government, and that Britain was now, in fact, focused on the future of Libya. Could you comment on that?
All, sadly, that the coalition government, the new government, has done is to appoint an inquiry into British complicity into torture in the past. But that inquiry isn't an open, independent inquiry with an independent judge-led panel. It's a Cabinet Office review which gives the Cabinet Office the ultimate say-so in the evidence produced. It's been determined it will be almost entirely in secret in relation to intelligence services activity, and those who've been tortured, the detainees, it's called the detainee inquiry, will not have any role to play in it. It is absolutely critical that this not be put to rest. It's critical that if it's investigated, it be done publicly. Every organisation in the world that has experience in how to eradicate torture insists upon two essential ingredients. First, that all the data that reveals torture is publicly known and understood, and secondly, that those on whose watch it happened, who were responsible, be brought to account. And neither of those preconditions is in existence in the construct that is present in Britain at the moment for investigating complicity. And therefore, what happened to Belhaj is central to understanding. Every bit of it should be made known for his sake and for the sake of the rest of the world and for the sake of the future. If we are going to stop this and be sure we're still continuing, even if we are inhibited now in such direct complicity in torture, we are nevertheless day to day in contact with, feeding questions to intelligence services, so-called, around the world that are at the behest of regimes whose major interrogation device is torture. This is what we do as part of our daily diplomatic bread and butter for our perceived strategic and economic interests, and we haven't stopped. And people are held daily, including British citizens, in arbitrary detention without access to lawyers, and we do not object. We put our noses in the trough and we feed from it.